Ndị be anyị ekenenu m unu ọzọ n'ụbọchị nke taata dịka o si aga n'iru akwụkwọ amanụ na anị ya ka ya bụ ife si eme ọzọ dịka ibe ya bụ daalụkwu unu si esoro anyị ya na-eme na n'iru akwụkwọ na Eastern News 24 dịka o si dị dịka isi fonu nkwa na ga na-ewetara ndị update gbasara maka ife na-eme n'iru akwụkwọ na gbasara maka nnwere onwe nke a na-azọ o nwere ihe wetara unu ihe anụwa ife some of the reactions mmalike unu ga ya bụ ife maka na ife ya bara ụmụ Igbo bakwara ụmụ Eastern Region ịma wee Maazị Nnamdi Kanu kwuru oge gara aga, the more you hold Maazị Nnamdi Kanu, the more Nigeria is being demolished. Ọ na-agbalị n'ike dị ike. Gee ntị ka ịnụ ihe Rufai kwuru n'ebe akwụkwọ. Ọ kọwara ihe niile dịka o si dị. Ọ bụ azin o tiwere ya bụ akụ oyibo nsogbe ka ntị ihe ya na ma dịka ị na-ege ya bụ ife ga-esia ya ị drọpụọla ya kọmentị gị on the comment section below ife iche. All right, over to you, sir.
Amid rising concerns about the cost of living fueled by protests in some states. Also, President Tinubu has directed immediate interventions to alleviate the suffering caused by the rising cost of food items. It follows a meeting of the Special Presidential Committee on Emergency Food Intervention at the Aso Villa. The presidency said that there is sufficient food supply in the country, but exploitation by some forces has caused an increase in the prices of food items. Minister of Information, Mohammed Idris, highlighted some of the actions to be taken, including unlocking the national food reserves, engaging with major millers and commodity traders, and addressing the impact of currency depreciation on food prices. The Central Bank Governor, Finance Minister, Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Chief of Staff, and National Security Advisor participated in the deliberations set to continue until Thursday.
The government is taking some action to ensure that Nigerians have some relief in terms of the availability of food on the table. Of course, this meeting is not by itself exhaustive. It's just like I said, the beginning is going to continue tomorrow and the day after. Now, some of these will involve unlocking the foods that are available in most of the storage facilities around the country. You know that the Federal Ministry of Agriculture has some food reserve that is going to be made available to Nigerians. Government is also talking to major millers and major commodity traders to also see what is available in their stores, to open it up so that government will provide some intervention, discuss with them and provide some intervention to make this food available to Nigerians. What government is noticing is that actually there is still food in this country. Some people are taking advantage of the situation, especially because of the high cost, the rise in or the depreciation in the value of our currency. That has led to
All right, we have there the Minister of Information, Mohammed Idris, giving a report on the meeting held with regards to food shortage. Rufai.
Okay, so I'll start with the President is back after his private visit. I hope we reduce such private visits, because if you're accountable to the people, you need to be able to tell the people about your whereabouts. But for his supporters, Daddy, Oyoyo, Daddy, Oyoyo, Kileba Amubo. But while he was away, a lot of problems happened. Insecurity, kidnapping, I can go on and about that. But what is most pertinent is about food. And the question is, how can we stop this? Food inflation has been going on for a while now. So that's why this meeting, to me, is very hypocritical. But for the sake of the supporters of this administration, that'll say, oh, praise them when they do something. Oh, I praise them for the meeting. But it's hypocritical, and I'll tell you why. It is not today food inflation had been rising by the statistical figures. So if it took a protest for you to have a meeting, is it that you were not checking the facts in the first place? But for those that want praise, I give it to them. Kudos on this meeting. Let's now come down to food. What are the major problems we are facing? Some people were saying in the meeting, oh, there's no food shortage and all of that. As at last year, we were ranked serious on the global hunger index. The hunger in Nigeria is serious, over 28.3% on the ranking table. Also, consistently, we've had an increasing number of people that are food insecure. The number rose from 17 million to about 25 million. Consistently, insecurity has stopped people from planting in all those planting belts in the country. People cannot cultivate. Mango and bokos that we talk about so much that they were killings are areas that they would normally plant potatoes and the likes. But I think the most important problem we're not looking at is even the situation with our silos. How do we even store the food we have? Government said to have about 33 silos in this country. In 2006, they claimed they were going to build 1 million mini silos for farmers. Today, we have not seen anything. Those 33 silos, only a couple of years ago, they said they were going to concession some of them and be making 6 billion annually. What have we made for the concession? So, when we say we want to release strategic grain reserve, we've had stories dating back to 2016 that was talking about how empty those silos are. Those silos are supposed to have a capacity of about 1.3 million metric tons of grains. What capacity of metric tons of grain do we have in the strategic grain reserve? Those are the questions we should start by asking. What's the viability of our strategic grain reserve in the country? I know the private sector have some, they'll be able to concession some from the government. How is the viability of that? Is it from the private sector you want to take? Secondly, what's the food plan for this administration? They talked about cultivating 150,000 hectares as palliative during COVID last year. If we had cultivated at that time, are we not supposed to have a first food cycle now? So what's going on? What is the strategic plan to be able to nip in the bud the problem of post-harvest losses? Also, pre-harvest losses. What is the food sustainability plan per crop in the country? In the 60s, Nigeria used to produce 1/3 of the tomato eaten in the West African sub-region, but today we have difficulties with tomato and onion and the likes. So these are the real conversations I feel we should bring to the table as regards this food plan, because it needs a holistic looking at.
All right, Dr. Lati.
Okay. One of the first things that President Tinubu did when he assumed office was to declare a state of emergency on food insecurity. That was July 2023. He not only declared a state of emergency on food insecurity, having realized that that was a problem, he moved the committee that he set up to the National Security Council. In other words, it became the responsibility of the National Security Council of Nigeria to worry about food, which makes sense because insecurity, is directly linked to whether or not the people can feed themselves. And the question that we ask is that what has that emergency committee been doing since July 2023? It is only when there is a problem, when the problem reaches a turning point, a boiling point in Nigeria, that you suddenly have people holding meetings. They hold meetings, they will talk shop, and they will go away and assume that the problem will disappear. But the problem does not disappear on its own. Hence, the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics in December 2023 announced, and that's government official figure, that inflation in Nigeria was already 33.3%. So it's not as if it's something that somebody is making up. It's something that is very clear. Now, the World Bank, in its World Food Security Report, which is the latest report, has reported that 7 states in northwest and north central of Nigeria, northwest and northeast of Nigeria, are facing the crisis of food insecurity, and that the situation is likely to worsen in 2024. Yobe, Zamfara are some of the states that are mentioned in that report. And therefore, it is not surprising that we have seen protests in Niger State this week. We have seen protests in Kano this week. We have seen protests over the rising cost of living in Nigeria, in Rivers State, in Port Harcourt, and also in Oyo State. What is established is that the government is not in a position to say that, oh, it is the opposition that is raising an alarm about food insecurity, that there is food in the country. Well, if there is food in the country, people will eat. After all, many years ago in this country, one federal minister said there was no problem because people were not yet eating from dustbins. The reality in Nigeria today is that people are already eating from dustbins. If you look very well, if you don't have eyesight problems, you know, because some people have eyes and they can't see, you will see people picking, you know, food items from garbage dumps across cities in Nigeria. So the argument about the opposition organizing protests cannot stand. The second point, therefore, deriving from that, is that government should not politicize food issue. It's not a matter for politics. It's a matter of security, as President Tinubu himself identified. So yesterday, there was a meeting that was chaired by the Chief of Staff, Femi Gbajabiamila, attended by ministers, including Minister of Education, Minister of Finance, CBN Governor, Ministers of Agriculture, both substantive and state, all deliberating against the background of protest. It had to take a protest on the streets of Mina and a protest of Kano for that committee to remember that they should meet. Okay, we don't know the full outcomes yet of that meeting, but what we know is that government is talking about commodity traders releasing food items in their possession. Similar to what happened in Kano State, with the governor appealing to commodity traders and business people to help the government. And the same business people were saying, yes, we are commodity traders, which were suffering. We may be trading in food commodities, but we have forex problems, we have insecurity problems, we have all kinds of challenges. What is government doing to help us? So it's so convenient to say commodity traders should just release food. What are the circumstances of those commodity traders? In typical textbook fashion, the government is also saying, oh, they will release food from the National Grain Reserve. Has anybody visited that National Grain Reserve? What is there? Or what we have? And what the quantity is? And how much of it can make any difference? So these are questions, you know, that government officials are not addressing. It is just as well that the House of Representatives, the lawmakers of Nigeria, are calling on government to find a solution to the problem. Because if care is not taken, many of those lawmakers in Abuja, they won't be able to go back to their constituencies. Because they go home, they will go and meet very angry people who will protest, who will ask them why they are feeding facts in Abuja and the people that they are representing have no access to food. One other consideration has been that, okay, the borders that have been closed, food items that have been prevented from being brought into Nigeria. When we are not doing any actual production here that can meet our needs. A bag of rice now is 65,000 naira. Just because we're not producing enough, and yet the Nigerian government says, oh, don't bring in rice from outside. These are questions that the government needs to address. Well, President Tinubu is back from a private visit. The little that we saw in the course of that private visit was that he was accompanied by his children, and they were watching football matches. Well, they are welcome back. While the president was away, security challenge in Nigeria got worse. Food insecurity got worse. As the president settles down on his return, and he sits down later this evening to watch the Super Eagles against South Africa, 1700 GMT. We hope there will be cause for joy, but the bigger cause for joy will be for the people of Nigeria to be able to feed, to be able to eat, for their objective of the Constitution under Section 14(2)(b), which is the security and welfare of the people to be met. So welcome back to work, President Tinubu. There is very serious work. People are hungry.
People are hungry. Welcome back, Mr. President. And Dr. Batu, you said that he should come in and settle, but I doubt very much if he'll be able to settle at all. I think he'd have to come in and hit the ground running. In fact, one would have thought that he would have gone straight from the airport to the office, bearing in mind the situation of things on ground. There's no sleep at all for the president at this time. And he did mention that no one should feel sorry for him, that he was ready for the job. This was during campaign seasons. And so we'll hold him to that word. And from campaign, they mentioned that he had sleepless nights. He was working 24 hours. I think he's going to have to stretch that time to work even more, because in the 13 days since he's been away from the country, things have gotten bad, well, worse. It would be interesting to find out how things can go so bad in just 13 days. What bad they have gone. The value of the Naira, devaluation of the Naira, further devaluation of the Naira, food insecurity that has been mentioned, hunger in the land, protests here and there, insecurity here and there, killings, kidnappings, ransoms, so many things that would be brought to the table of the president. The question would be, which would he tackle first, or which would he, or perhaps have to tackle all of them at once? Well, he has a team of people that he's appointed, and one of the things that the president has often said is his ability to pick the right people to fit the right jobs. And so you would understand why the meeting, this was the first in a series of meetings of the Special Presidential Committee on Intervention, Emergency Food Intervention, chaired by the Chief of Staff, Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, where they'd come out following that, where the Minister of Information and National Orientation had spoken about some of the interventions in the immediate that this administration would take to stem the tide of food inflation, hunger, and to feed the people in Nigeria. But the big question is, these announcements, even though it's just one of 3 of the meetings, are they enough? Do they inspire confidence in Nigerians as to whether or not this government has a grasp on the issue of, hunger in the country? Unfortunately, I don't think that the recommendations or perhaps the announcement would do that. A few other things that ought to have been mentioned with regards to, at this moment, it's an emergency. The name of the committee itself is an emergency intervention. Therefore, people, as had been mentioned earlier on, temporarily open the borders, crash the price of food, let people be able to afford to eat. Let's not forget that because of the crisis with the humanitarian ministry, I'm not sure what the status of the conditional cash transfer is. What's the status of that? Because that was meant to be able to help the most vulnerable in Nigeria to be able to afford certain things. If that has been halted because of the situation on ground, then we need to look into that one more time, or perhaps ask about the status of things on that particular conditional cash transfer. The second aspect, of course, is also the area of the talks about minimum wage. These are some of the interventions that this administration has said they were going to put in place as a result of the removal of fuel subsidy and the attendant effect on Nigerians. Unfortunately, despite the very hasty removal of fuel subsidy, even though there was a big case for the importance of doing that at the time, it seemed like the interventions weren't quite as quick or in terms of responding, because we do not want to get to breaking points before we begin to realize that we have a challenge on our hands. I think it's clear for anyone to see that we need to take action, and unfortunately, even though the response has been quite slow, perhaps they would speeden that up. Then finally, I must mention the fact that the Minister of Information and National Orientation had said something. He'd said that he alleged that some elements were taking advantage of the high food prices and the depreciation of the Naira to wreak havoc. I don't think it's elements that are trying to take advantage. It's the people who are protesting because they don't have food to eat. And it's important that in trying to manage the situation through information and communication, that we are also not burying our heads in the sands as to what the real challenges of the people are. It's not good enough to politicize issues like this, especially when it involves the lives and the stomach of Nigerians. What must be done in terms of assurances is action. So we have heard the announcement. How long would it take, or how soon will this come into effect? And to what extent will this impact be? And furthermore, as they continue conversations, because like I mentioned, this is just the first of 3, we're hoping that they will be working tirelessly and, if possible, without even taking a break, to ensure that they come up with something tangible that would have an immediate impact on Nigerians, because it's like a ticking bomb. And anytime, if things are not well handled, there might be an explosion which we want to prevent in this nation. Move on to our next story. The governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, Olayemi Cardozo, yesterday said that the growing number of Nigerian students studying abroad, growing medical tourism as well as food imports have led to the depreciation of the Naira against the dollar. He disclosed that over the past decade, foreign exchange demand for education and healthcare had totaled nearly $40 billion, surpassing the total current foreign exchange reserves of the CBN. Cardozo, during his presentation at the sectoral debate organized by the House of Representatives, further disclosed that personal travel allowances, PTA, have accounted for a total of $58.7 billion during the same period. All right. Rufai, we aired this live yesterday on Arise with regards to the CBN Governor appearing before the National Assembly, but what's your take on his claims as to the reason why there's pressure on on dollar reserves in Nigeria?
I'm going to sing a quick song. Fela used Ojuelegba to demonstrate what was happening in Nigeria many years ago when he sang Bafukana Quench. And he said, for Ojuelegba, moto they come from north, moto they come from south, policeman no dey for center, na Bafuka be that you, danku eleke. That's exactly what's happening in Nigeria. This is the same Nigeria. Now in the 70s, UCH in Ibadan was one of the best healthcare centers in the Commonwealth that people used to leave Canada to come and deliver children in Nigeria. The Saudi royal family, Saudi and Qatar that they've gone, what a law, far ahead of us, used to come here for healthcare. All of a sudden, healthcare is gone. Ask how much of those monies that you say we are spending on healthcare in the last 10 years is going to India. This was the same India that a couple of years ago, their healthcare, but they revamped it, mostly private sector led. I would also like to ask him, how much of that medical tourism money did President Buhari spend? How much? That was the president that was a tourist for healthcare. That was, close to half of the year was out of the country on healthcare. So how much did they spend on dollars for his parking alone for his presidential jets? How much did the UK doctors collect from Nigeria in forex on President Buhari's healthcare? You see, when you have a domino effect happening, that's what we're doing. Look at our university system. Ayo, at a point in this country, if you schooled abroad, they used to laugh at you. In the 80s here, if you schooled abroad, the schools like Ife and all of that, the federal universities were prominent. But we all know the domino effect, how the university system started to decay after the Ali Must Go protest. And then ASU started having series of strikes. So when all these strikes were happening, we did not know that people were going to be going abroad and looking for alternatives. And let's also extrapolate the figures. It's in the last 8 years, those numbers tripled. As at 1998, 99, we just have 15,000 students going abroad. In the last 8 years, it rose to about 70,000 from 50,000. It's projected 2022 now to be around 100,000. So all the things we used to have, then we no longer have it. Very solid healthcare system, no longer the case. Very solid education system, no longer the case. We have, like Tracy Chapman says in her song Fast Car, we have driven Nigeria in the fast car to quick oblivion. And we should all take the responsibility. In the 80s, there was no amount of importation of Tokumbo cars. We had Peugeot Automobile in Nigeria. Let's ask them what happened to Pan. What happened to Volkswagen? Didn't these people one billion wobia? Didn't they eat it up? So we destroyed our country by ourselves. And now we are saying, how would we not be import dependent foreign wise? All of these failures are a reflection of the country. Except we change. We can. How much did the same politicians spend on medical tourism to all these countries?
Right.
Okay, well, first, let's commend the House of Representatives for calling to account, to offer explanations about the state of the economy and the free fall of the Naira. Key officials of the state, including the CBN Governor, Yemi Cardoso, Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Edun, Minister of Budget and National Planning, Senator Atiku Bagudu, and also Zach Adedeji, who is the chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service. These gentlemen interacted with the House of Representatives yesterday, and Cardoso is the one we're focusing on now. Well, I'd complain that the CBN Governor of Nigeria should not be speaking like a newspaper columnist, just speaking in general terms. He should back up his presentations with core data. And yesterday, he made an attempt in that direction when he was talking about demand and supply being a major problem responsible for the devaluation of the Naira. And what was his argument? That, look, the demand for dollar has gone up, has increased astronomically, but the supply is very low. It's not available. So the pressure is suffered by the Naira. And so the Naira keeps going down because everybody is looking for, dollar. And then he narrowed down to the state of the economy. He painted a good picture. First, health. He says, look, the amount of money we have spent on health alone in between 2010 and 2020, according to him, is over $10 billion. The amount we have spent on education abroad is over $28 billion. When you add it together, that comes to about $40 billion. He gave that, average, which is about the same amount as Nigeria's strategic external reserve. That's what has been squandered. And the reason for this is because people no longer want education in Nigeria. This country used to have some of the best universities in the world. I keep saying, when I was an undergraduate, students came from Cameroon, from all these neighboring countries, from Ghana, to come and study here. There were students from Lesotho, from South Africa, from Botswana, although those ones were on Nigerian scholarship, even if I don't know what Nigeria gained from it. They will come here, they will get drunk, they will be falling down from hostel balconies and all that. But Nigeria was so kind then, it was educating children all over Africa. But they got quality education. Nigerians were so proud of the education system then that it was a tradition that if you attended a particular secondary school, your parent will want you to go to that same secondary school because it had become a family tradition. There were many people who went to school with us in Abeokuta, whose parents were in Lagos, in Kaduna, but they would say, no, my child must go to my school because my school gave me the best. I don't know any parent who is still sending their children to their alma mater now. Okay? As for the hospitals, yes, Rufa already cited the example of Saudi princes coming for healthcare in Nigeria. Go to the same UCH that they used to come to them. They will tell you they probably don't have diesel in their generator. The place is surviving on generator. So everything has gone completely down. And the data that is given by the minister is probably just even an estimate, because he will probably be quoting people who go to the banks to go and ask for transfers and all that. Most people don't go to any transfer. Out of frustration, they just go straight and try their luck at the black market. So that's how bad the situation is. So I think the CBN governor gave the lawmakers a very good picture. He painted a good picture. But the problem remains. How do we address and solve the problem? Since he knows that the problem is demand and supply, what is he doing about the supply of forex? That is number one question. I don't think there was enough clarity in everything that he said, other than he's saying that the reforms that they are introducing would help in solving the problem. Number two, he is asking Nigerians to also do their part. He is asking us for attitudinal change. Please, what is this attitudinal change that the CBN governor is talking about? When people go into government and they hold and they hold strategic position, they should leave evangelism back at home. People are not interested in evangelism; they are interested in solutions. Now, if people are sick and they don't have the hospitals that they can go to in Nigeria, and they don't want to die, and their family members don't want them to die, of course, they will go abroad. They will go to India. It's even funny that India today is a major reference for Nigeria. Look, in those days, if you came anywhere around Nigeria and you claim that you studied in India, people will look at you twice. They will think maybe you went there to go and study magic. You say, B.A. Bombay? B.A. Bombay? They will be laughing at you. When we had IFE, we had the UNA, we had the University of Ibadan, they will think you couldn't pass entrance examination into Nigerian university. That was why you went abroad. Yeah. In those days, if you came, you said you had PhD from United States. People will laugh. Yeah. They will be wondering, this one can't go to UI, can't go to UNA. That was how good Nigeria was. So the governor of the CBN is saying attitudinal change. Which attitudinal change is he talking about? Families want solid education for their children, and they find it available. Although that comes with its cost, with its own cost. You send these children immediately after secondary school abroad. By the time they come back with their degree, they don't want to come back here. They want to stay permanently abroad. Before you know it, they will be behaving like Oyibo people. You will tell them, go and bring husband, go and bring wife. They will say they are career people. Which one is career? All these things must go together. Rufa is another career person sitting down here. So this thing about attitudinal change is just hot air. It doesn't make any sense. So government must solve the problem. Since President Tinubu has said he's not afraid to address the problems that he inherited, well, they have swallowed the pestle. There's no sitting down, there's no standing up. They just must find a solution to the problem.
And solution they must find. I believe that interaction with the House of Representatives yesterday with the CBN Governor, Mr. Yemi Cardozo, was quite enlightening. However, some people were quite disappointed with the outcome or some of the revelations of the CBN Governor. In fact, in some quarters, it's been said that in responding to, or the reasons he gave for why there's a rapid decline or decline of the Naira is as a result of pressure on foreign currency or dollars, especially by people who go to take education abroad or pursue educational pursuits abroad and medical or seek medical tourism. People say that he's not actually facing the real issues. Yes, given the numbers he said, you can mention that yet that is a contributory factor. However, there's still some core fundamental issues that must be settled. It's this same thing about burying our heads in the sand and not giving the actual problem or the actual cause of a problem and putting it to just the surface level things. Addressing issues around productivity in terms of our nation, those addressing issues around round-tripping, racketeering, because when he talks about PTA, how many people who applied for PTA in the time under review got the value of the PTA they asked for? Let's investigate what works in terms of making a request for PTA, the middleman and the cut from there, and then before it gets to the final person. So the people that the CBN governor is pointing his fingers at, unfortunately, are just the fall guys. There are deeper issues, which has been said a number of times on the show, that if this administration or the CBN governor is serious about fighting or tackling this, all the irregularities and corruption that happens in the forex industry, then he must be willing to admit the truth. Now let's talk about the implications of failures of institutions. We can see that when it comes to the economy and the strengthening or perhaps or otherwise the weakening of the Naira, it is multi-pronged. And the decisions that we take or the lack of that seems like it has no direct impact on it is actually bearing a lot of negative impact on the strength of our Naira and, of course, the economy. Look at education, for instance. And I hope that following this summons, they will summon the Minister of Education and Minister of Health. Because we focus a lot on, Minister of Finance, CBN Governor, but we need to ask the Minister of Agriculture. We need to ask the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment. These are complementary ministerial appointments or ministerial responsibilities that if they are saying that our educational system and the health structure or system in Nigeria has broken down to the extent that people would rather take their hard-earned money, transfer it, and convert it to dollars and send their wards abroad, it's because we're in a dire situation. How many people really would not prefer to keep their wards here at home? There are many challenges that parents have faced in their quest for seeking a better life for their children. And so it's an indictment on the nation and these ministries as to why they are not working, because at the end of the day, we must continue to dig deeper and deeper until we find the root cause of some of these challenges. Even though in terms of how impactful or the contributory factor is not as high as other things, we must also speak to those things if we're looking for a holistic response to tackling this challenge that we have on our hands. So the first thing is that why do we have a literacy problem in this nation where we've had successive governments allocate monies or budget to the education sector? Why is it that the average Nigerian who finishes from a Nigerian school after primary school cannot read and write? It is there. We have a literacy crisis on our hands. And then you wonder why. It's no longer a university that parents are taking their children to school. Right from primary school, right from secondary school, parents are shipping their children off abroad just for a chance at a better life. Healthcare. Why is it that just a simple, well, it's not simple, but what should be an uncomplicated process of childbirth you would need, aside from wanting to get the papers of the other country, but just for safety, some people would rather go to another country to have children because of the maternal mortality rate. How many cancer centers do we have here in Nigeria? Because when we talk about India, they look at issues around the kidney, look at issues around cancer. Why is it that we are going? So these are questions that we must answer in response to some of these questions. But beyond that, I hope that the CBN governor would also be honest about some of the bigger issues that has caused this free fall of the Naira.
Ndị be anyị daalụ niile nụ kunu si na-esekpụrụ anyị n'ihe ndị anyị tigasị n'ebe akwụkwọ n'ụbọchị nke taa bụ Orie. Ka efi nwere ike ikwu gbasịta maka ihe ndị a niile Biafran Prime Minister kwuru n'ebe akwụkwọ gbasịta maka nnwere onwe and vote ka ala atọ. Ka efi nwere ikwu maka ya bụ ife drọpụrụ anyị ya on the comment below. Ọzọ dịka ibe ya bụ chetara ya bụ Eastern News 24 ka isi were wetara nnukwu ozi ya dị oke mkpa. Ndanụ na ụmụnne m, ngwanụ ka emesịa nụ.